Welcome to Beyond the Closing Table. I'm Michael Martin, and we're here to discuss strategies, stories, and lessons learned with top producing mortgage lenders, real estate agents, and entrepreneurs. I'm very excited to have my guest, Steve Richman, here with me. Steve has spoken in every state in the United States to over 700,000 viewers and guests. So we're really excited for Steve to share a lot of great information about what he brings to the table in regards to entrepreneurs and real estate in general. So Steve, thanks so much for being here.
Dude, I appreciate you having me here. Always a good time. Always a good conversation with Michael Martin.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful when I get to have friends here, so it's wonderful to have you here too. So let's chat in a little bit, or discuss a little bit about your background, kind of where you came from. How did you end up exactly where you are right now?
My background, I would consider myself quite unique. Believe it or not, I started off as a litigation attorney. Who wants a hug now, baby? You love litigation attorneys. I know that. And I was sitting there and I'm doing litigation, and every day I'm coming home and I'm saying, I don't like what I'm doing. I'm not enjoying my life. And amen, hallelujah, God bless my wife. You know, we're actually next month, we're going to be 31, our 31st anniversary. So we've been together a long time. She's like, if you're going to keep coming home and being this miserable, you got to find something else to do, because I'm not hanging out for the next 31 years for you to be this miserable. Because I mean, I don't know. Being a lawyer is just, it looks great on TV, but in real life, it's real different than that.
And you were doing litigation, like in courts and all that kind of stuff?
That's all I did was court. I mean, it was, I actually had my very first, I got sworn into the bar on a Thursday afternoon, and I had my first case in front of a judge Friday morning. So
Holy crap.
I'd already reviewed the file, and no one ever went to court with me or anything. They're just like, go. And so I was doing this, and I was just like, you know what? My clients hate me because I'm not getting them $1 million. Opposing counsel hates me because I'm asking for $1 million. The judge is like, hey, I'd rather just play golf. So would you just shut up? So I was like, are we helping anybody? Are we doing anything good? I found it very frustrating and unfulfilling.
Yeah.
And I had a buddy of mine in the mortgage business. And he says to me, he goes, you don't like your job, do you? I said, I don't like my job at all. He goes, you can sell anything to anybody. The way you talk, how much do you make? I told him, he goes, here's a 10% raise. When do you want to start? Come be a loan officer in AE. So go to work with him. I'm a loan officer. I'm an AE. I end up running the front end of the business.
Explain to everyone what an AE is.
Sure.
Account executive.
So I end up running the front end of the business. He's ending up in the back end.
Okay.
LO, AE, LO. B2C, business to consumer. Hey, you're Michael Martin. Do you need a loan? Love to do a loan for you. AE, business to business, B2B. Hey, you have a mortgage broker. Don't worry. We can do what? You can broker your loans to us and we can take care of them. So I was wearing both hats and juggling all that.
So wholesale, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But we had the best of both worlds, right? You could do either one that you wanted to do.
Oh, great. Okay.
And so I was doing that, and this is back in the 90s when it was all different. And I know everybody says, oh, in 2008 it got bad. Actually, towards the end of the 90s, that's when subprime really started to raise its head. And a couple of things happened, and he was funding with his own money and stuff, and it was like, hey, you know what? Let's stop that. And while we were doing that, I was speaking. I was teaching public speaking at Towson University up in Maryland. And really like that. I was teaching all these loan officer courses and real estate courses and all that stuff. And I'm like, I like this speaking stuff better than I like this actual mortgage stuff. So what did I do? Went out on my own. I did that for about a year. Was doing that. And this company called Shapira Negotiations Institute, guy named Ron Shapira. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but you're a sports head. Have you heard of him? You're shaking.
Yeah, you and I talked about him recently.
Yeah. So he's a guy who has more Hall of Fame baseball players, he's their agent, than anybody else, right?
Okay.
He's got Cal Ripken and Kirby Puckett and Eddie Murray and Jim Palmer. So he says, hey, come train my negotiate. He wrote a book, The Power of Nice. He says, come train my negotiations across the country. So I said, no problem. So I did that for a while. And we're sitting here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Wonderful place to be. Love Raleigh, North Carolina. And my fraternity brother from college gives me a call. He says, we're looking for somebody who has a mortgage, real estate, legal, training, and consulting background. And I'm like, oh, right? I mean, you know, how much more realistic can it be and perfect fit?
Literally everything you've been doing up until that time.
Right.
Yeah.
All in one package. So I came down. It's actually 2 blocks from where we're sitting right here today. And I worked there for as their national spokesperson and their business consultant for, I think it was 19 years.
Okay.
And then COVID came.
Yeah.
Oh no, we got COVID. It's really hard to be a public speaker when you can't see the public.
No doubt.
So what happens? We're doing all this webinar, da, 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 da. And I said, you know, I think it's time to try something else. And I went to go work for a lender for a little while. Boom, boom. I said, I think I
What
want
were
to
you doing there?
their spokesperson
okay,
and
yeah.
same kind of thing. Talk, talk, talk. That's what I do.
Somewhat using it as towards recruiting at all? Or not
I did
necessarily?
some recruiting because I was just actually named a couple months ago one of the most connected professionals in the mortgage industry by National Mortgage Professional
That is not
Magazine.
surprising at all.
So did that, and I said, I think I'm going to go out on my own for a little while. And now I'm 2.5 years of being in on my own. And that's what brings us here today.
2.5 years, because it was shortly after COVID that you went, and that's right. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Hard. You and I met originally through your first gig that you were talking about, the very first, but the
Yep.
mortgage insurance company gig, because you were speaking to our events, right? I was on the board for the Raleigh Mortgage Bankers Association, and you would speak to us probably once or twice a year. It's amazing. One of the things I loved about you is you make learning about technology or whatever it is you're teaching fun. Like, you do such a great job with that, which I think is probably any educator's job. If they really want to get people involved and to learn, they got to do that, right? And
Well, it's
you were teaching LinkedIn and like making it exciting. I had to change everything in my LinkedIn when I saw you do that.
It's interesting you say that. So you say, how did you make that transition from lawyer? So I started as a lawyer. I'm working at a mortgage company. I'm basically running the company. And so I had my head of HR. Her name was Linda. I'll tell you what her name was. And we went to an HR conference. And so here I am, a mortgage person. I got head of HR, and we're sitting here in front of a panel of 4 lawyers. And they're here's all the changes in HR law and everything you need to do. Da, 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 da. And I'm like,
Just like typical compliance, right? Yeah.
But not just typical compliance, they were doing case recitations. Now, what that means from law school is they say, okay, here's your fact pattern, here's the issue, here's the resolution, and here's what you need to do. And I tapped my HR rep, and Linda, on the shoulder. I said, do you have any idea what they're saying? She goes, I have no idea what they're talking about. And that's when the proverbial light bulb went off on top of my head. And what it said was, you need to be able to speak and deliver it in the language and the understanding so that people will actually get it. You're not up there saying, I'm an expert, look how smart I am. You're up there saying, oh my gosh, this is something really important for you. How can I make this so that you're going to understand it and be able to implement it? And it's both, understand it and implement. They always say, is knowledge power? Is knowledge power? No. Knowledge is not power. Power is derived from how you leverage your knowledge. So if you action.
Yeah.
Because if all you do is say, I'm learning, all you are is a book.
That's right.
But as soon as you say, I'm learning, and now I'm going to do something with that information, now you find success.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been involved in coaching for most of my career, and I was a slow implementer for quite a while. What I noticed, right, with the people that were really successful in coaching, where their volumes and their business started exploding, is they just implemented faster, right? You don't even have to have the full knowledge of it. Just go do it, right? Even if it's wrong, you can learn it and fix it on the way. It's too many people are scared, I think, to take that knowledge out and actually do something with it. And if they did that more, they'd see better, faster success.
When you started using the internet, you didn't know what you were doing. What did you need to do? You needed to move a mouse. Now there's AI out there. I'm going to wait till it's there. Why? Jump in, start doing it, and when you learn from the beginning, you just sit there and progress the whole time.
Yeah. So here you are, and now you're doing speaking engagements and trainings and so forth across the country for different private companies, correctly? Is that right?
Companies, associations. I have a booking agent, all that. So she sets me up with certain things, but most comes directly through me.
Okay, great. So that's what you spend most of your time in. We're approaching the end of the year, beginning the new year soon, and this is the time I think that everyone starts to, revisit their goals. Now, I think in reality, you should be checking, you make your goals and then you should be revisiting them throughout the whole year. However,
You better have your checks going on,
that's
because if you
right.
show at the end of the year, oh, I'm not there yet, that's an
That's
issue.
exactly right. And so I know you wanted to talk a little bit about goal setting, and I'd love to see what your thoughts are on that and how
Yeah.
what we can learn from there.
But before we get to goal setting, you said something in your introductions,
Hmm.
stories and lessons.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation the other day where you said to me, tell me about a time where, you failed. And
Yeah.
did you learn anything from that? Because that's what we're trying to do, is help people move forward.
Sure.
And sometimes they're in a bad spot where they are. And my answer is simply this: stop being so judgmental and hard on yourself. Give yourself a break. Are you kidding me? Everybody always likes to come back and say, do you have any regrets from leaving law? Was that a mistake to go work for an MI company? Was that a bad move to go work for a lender? And my answer is, what's a bad move? What's a mistake? What's a regret? I I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. Well, I'm definitely weird. But the way that I always look at it is, stop with the judgment and figure out, this is where I am. Where do I want to go? And start moving in that direction. So here I am. I'm a lawyer. And I'm saying, what? Okay, now I'm a lawyer and I'm not enjoying law. Okay, was that a mistake to go to law school? That's irrelevant. I went to law school. The question is, now that I'm here, where do I want to go? Okay, I'm going to get in the mortgage industry. Oh, well, where are you going to go? So stop thinking about, was it a problem, and start thinking about, where do you want to go?
Yeah, I think too many people focus too much on the past, and the reality is you got to focus on the present and where you're headed. Exactly what you just said. No
Right?
doubt.
Because here's a road. I mean, think about, I don't know how you drive home, but you could go that way or you could go that way. Either way, you're going to end up home, right?
Sure.
So just go.
Yep.
Start going. Can I tell a fable? I mean,
Please
if
do.
we don't have time, say no, we don't
No,
have
please
time to
do,
do it.
absolutely.
It's just one of my favorite little ones, because and they all start. There was a farmer in a small town, right? Farmer in a small town, what does he do? He's got 2 horses. All of a sudden, a storm comes up, knocks the fence down, the horses run away. All the townspeople come and say, oh my gosh, you're never going to be able to plow your fields. You don't have any horses. You must be miserable. He says, we'll see. Next day, the 2 horses come home, and what do? They found another wild stallion out in the wild, and now he's got 3 horses. And everybody comes up, oh my gosh, you now have 3 horses. You must be so happy. You didn't even have to pay for that other horse. You're so lucky. And what did the farmer say? We'll see. And then he had a son, and what does the son do? The son goes to tame the wild stallion, and he gets up on the stallion, and the stallion bucks, and he falls off, and he breaks his leg, and everybody comes up from the town. Oh my gosh, your son's not going to be able to help you with the farm because he has a broken leg. Your crops are all going to, you must be miserable and sad. He says, we'll see. And then what happens? A war breaks out. And all young men are drafted into war, and they're off to go fight in the war. But his son doesn't go to the war. Why? Because he has a broken leg. He can't get there. So everybody says, you must feel so lucky that your kid's not at war. And he says, we'll see. And that's the thing. Stop saying, oh, I'm in this position. That's a bad thing. That's a good thing. This is where you are. Where are you going with it, baby?
Yeah.
That's what you care about.
Yeah, it's funny. I just saw something recently about that exact fable. We're talking about that. And the point, right, of that story is you can't make a long-term decision off a short-term situation, but you can move forward. And that's all you need to do, right? Figure out where you're headed and and just move forward one step at a time. And I think, I've been now in this industry for 23 years. At the end of this year, it'll be 23 years. And every year I set goals on where I want to be next year. I used to set absurdly high goals.
And I know you would, because you are a goal-setting kind of guy.
I'm fairly goal oriented. And so I used to set really high goals. And for many years, I just never hit them. And I never had that satisfaction of actually achieving the goal. We grew every year, but we didn't grow as big as I thought we would. So I got involved in some coaching, and they kind of focused on 20% growth. Now, 20% growth, pretty darn good growth for most people, right? And so I started following that, and then we started crushing some of our goals. And it's amazing how great it actually feels to hit the darn goal. Now, here we are towards the end of 2024, and we're like this close to hitting our annual goal for this year. So we're going to do everything we can to wrap it up this year. But regardless, right, we can only do what we can do here. And then we've got to start next year and planning for 2025. So recently, in fact, yesterday, our CEO Steve Jacobson here at Fairway
Great guy.
sent out an email with a graph on where rates are expected to be, next year, and really through 26. There's a lot of people thinking that there's a lot of great things that are going to happen in the mortgage industry after the last 2-3 years of pretty tough years, right? It's hard to complain about really tough years when you had the best 2 years of your career, probably the industry, but it doesn't make it easy regardless. So tell me a little bit what your thoughts are on goal setting, and we can certainly go from there.
Got two thoughts. I'm going to do the second first.
Okay.
So just listening to you talk about how you start hitting it, and I want 20% growth, and I want to do that. When you're thinking about goals and success, inertia, momentum, whatever you want to call it, is real. So it's very much a snowball effect. Once there's a good, there's another good, then there's another good, then there's another good, and it keeps building. If we keep with that judgmental, okay, I got something good. Now when's the next bad thing? When's the shoe going to drop? What's the next problem that I'm going to encounter? So embrace that inertia, the momentum, the snowball effect to be able to do that. But when you set the goal, and I know, smart goals, right? We all know what smart goals mean. I'm not even going to tell you what smart goals. Go Google it. We all know what smart means. But I saw something online the other day, a mutual friend of ours, and they posted something along the lines of, if you want to make $1 million in this business, and I don't care if it's real estate, I don't care if it's mortgages, if you want to make $1 million, this is how you do it.
Okay.
So I read, okay, that your goal is $1 million, and the answer was, what you need to do is you take your average loan amount or your average home value, whatever, what's your commission that you make off of that? So on average, you make X dollars per transaction. Then to make $1 million, you have to multiply Y number of closed transactions to get to $1 million. How do you know how many closed transactions you need? What you're going to do is you say, all right, how many leads? What's my closing ratio based upon those leads? So therefore, that's what the number has to be.
Yeah, I heard this down. They call it like the chunk down method, right? So it's basically figuring out how many leads you get to how many pre-approvals,
right,
or applications, to how many pre-approvals, to how many closings, ultimately, right? Yeah.
There's your numbers. Go get your $1 million. And someone chimed in and said, but you're saying average loan amount or average house. I live in a small town in Ohio, and our houses, I don't get loan amounts like that. So how do I make $1 million? And the response was, and I respect the response, it was the correct response. The response was, well, you got one of two things you can do. You either got to up your number of closed transactions, or you got to up the amount of the value of the home, or start doing higher loans, right?
Or up your profitability, so the title line maybe, right?
Good luck making more in that. You start trying to do that, then all of a sudden people are going elsewhere. So those are the two, and I'm like, absolutely right. But my question is, where'd you come up with the $1 million? Because if you're somebody that's sitting in Miami, or if you're somebody in Northeast Ohio, in a small town, $1 million is not $1 million.
Yeah.
So I sort of looked it up, and it said, well, $1 million in Miami is the equivalent of, it was 33%, so $666,000 in Northeast Ohio. So I say, when you're looking at that, why aren't you saying, hi, I need to make $666,000? Where'd you come up with this fictitious $1 million from? And to me, when you say smart, I don't care if it's specific, I don't care if it's actually attainable. But when I look at that, if you want to be specific, $1 million is not specific. $1 million, the equivalent of $1 million in Miami, that's specific.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to figure out how much you want to make and what your number is, you have to take into account where you are, because $1 million is not the same $1 million somewhere else.
So agreed completely. Every market's so different, right? We talk about this in the mortgage world, like the people in California that are dealing with these giant loans versus the people in Ohio, right? I wouldn't even say Miami so much, just because you get right outside of the condo world and you're dealing with lower price stuff in Florida. But
a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you go move to Portugal? Because right now you can live for $60,000. You can get one of the. Did I say Portugal? I meant Morocco. I'm sorry, okay. I meant Morocco. He's like, for $60,000, you can have one of the nicest condos in all of Morocco.
That they're right now they're selling somewhere in Italy. They're selling these houses for $1. You have to move there. I don't know how long you have to stay there, but it's pretty crazy. But they're obviously in disrepair, but it's pretty wild. But yeah, you could move to either of those places, right? $66,000 for a nice condo. But I think when you look at setting goals, it's got to be, as you said too, like it's got to be reasonable to where you were and figure out why is it important to you ultimately, right? Because if you want to make $1,000,000 or you want to make $100,000, it doesn't really matter. It's like, where are you coming from and where do you want to be? More importantly, where do you see yourself down the road? Now, you have this concept too. I know you and I talked about recently about if someone gave you a bunch of money, right? Or if
Right.
you made it, yeah. Why don't you jump into that?
Well, first, I always say, why are you accepting somebody else's definition of success? Why on earth was Steve Jobs? You know who Steve Jobs is.
You do.
Was he successful?
I would say he had some success and some failures, but ultimately probably fairly successful until he passed away, unfortunately,
Well,
because of
he
cancer. Right?
passed away, right? But was he successful when he was alive? Was he successful?
I'd say a pretty successful guy.
I disagree.
Okay.
Why? Because your definition of success is based upon the SMART goals that we just said, and it's how much money do you make. And if your definition of success is simply how much money you make, you are absolutely right. He was totally successful.
Would he say he's successful?
He actually said later in life, I have regrets. Why? Every book I've ever read, every movie I've ever seen says he was a lousy father and a lousy husband. And I got to tell you something. The relationship that I have with if you gave me $100 million and you said, but I'm taking your kids away from you and you're not going to have any relationship with them whatsoever, you can keep your $100 million.
Amen to that, yeah.
So when I look at my definition, there's a guy, and forgive me, a guy, he used to be the CEO of Coke in the early 90s, Coca-Cola. I can't remember his name. I'm struggling with it. But he gave a keynote address. He says, in life, you're juggling 5 balls. And those 5 balls are family, friends, work, finance, health, and spirituality. And only one of those balls is made of rubber, and the other balls are all made of glass. And the one that is made of rubber is what? Is work or finance. Because if that drops, hey, okay, I had a bad year, it can bounce back up. If your health fails, it's always going to have a scar there, right? If your family fails, there's always going to be doubt there. So when I look at my definition of success, I don't just look at finance or work. I look at all 5 categories and say, okay, where am I in those 5 categories?
Sure. We utilize this thing called a circle.
I've seen the tool.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's you kind of wheel of life. I'm sorry, and you kind of measure yourself on where each you are. And there's actually a little bit more than 5 or 6 on there, but I think it's crucial to do a reevaluation every so often, because where you are today is not where you're going to be tomorrow in any one of those numbers, right? From a financial standpoint, you could be significantly better off today than you were 2 months ago because the stock market's taken off, right? Depending on the stocks that you own and so forth. And yet, if you got diagnosed with cancer, right, then your health obviously is going to be an issue. And so, with all of those pieces of the puzzle, you can't be the best father, as you said, if your health is not there, right? I've got a couple great friends right now. One of them that have parents that are having some serious challenges and issues, and I think as I just turned 50 this year.
Kid,
You're
a kid.
It's the first time, right, that I've looked at my life and felt like I'm actually like, holy crap, and I still don't feel old, but it's one of those things where like, wow, I'm probably on the other side of this game, and I feel so young, and I feel like, fortunately I look young, so that helps. But the point is, there's a certain point in time where you've got to look at the end of this, and so I guess where I'm going with all that is when you have a parent that's going through that, it's really important to realize where you are with your children and so forth, because that they're also going to be dealing with that, right? And going back to
Well,
the family
I just had a revelation when we were sitting there saying that. Go back to how I started my introduction of being a lawyer. Was I making good money being a lawyer? Yeah. And what did my wife say to me?
Sure.
Yeah, but you're miserable. So I don't want to go through, I don't want you to have money and be miserable. That makes no sense to go through life doing that. So the trick is, how do you combine the money helps you have the good life and you enjoy the work that you're doing all the time. That's a big reason why I personally am now what? I'm a professional speaker, because I enjoy that more than actually doing loans.
Sure.
I know how to do loans. Done a lot of loans.
Yeah.
But I actually enjoy this better. So how can I take that and convert it so I'm having more fun what I'm doing and making enough money that I'm hitting the lifestyle that I want to do?
Yeah, I appreciate that. What are you, as far as 2025, what does that look like for Steve Richman and in your role? You've been doing this now for a couple of years. What does that look like for you going forward?
Well, if everybody goes to steverichman.com and says, I want to talk to you, cowboy, that would be looking really good. We talk a lot about in the world, what's your why? And I like to be a little bit more selfish than that, because what's your why is, I'm not going to cure cancer. I'm not going to bring peace to the Middle East. I want to just focus a little bit more on my instead of the why.
Mm-hmm.
What's my? It's not what's your why. What's your my? How can you make things better for yourself? And we go back to those goals. Every time I do speaking, every time you close a loan, every time you sell a home, what's your goal? And my goal is simply this. I want to do such a good job for you that I'm going to get at least one referral from you. That's it. It's that simple. Why? Because if I get one referral from you and then I get one referral from the next person, boom, that means I will do at least as good next year that I did this year.
Sure.
Because if I get one referral from everybody, boom. By the way, how many of those people are now going to say, oh, I have something else. Now I've just grown my business. And what happens if they give two? Boom. Not to mention the regular marketing that I'm doing right now, that could grow the business. So if your goal is, you say, what are you looking at 2025? I'm hitting everybody that I talked to in 2024 who didn't give me a referral. How was it? It was awesome. Did you learn something? Yes. Hey, are you having another meeting next year? Do you know somebody else who can? Is there any way that we can drive a referral from that? So my whole goal every single time is not to close the loan or to sell the home. You know, you're a great loan officer, Mike. You are. You are very good at what you do. The loan's going to close. It's going to happen. That real estate agent that you work with, I see your picture on the truck sitting out there with the real estate agents. That house is going to sell. Someone's going to buy that house. You know it's going to happen. In addition to that, what do you want? I drive for the referral. And that's how I'm setting up to look what's going to happen for next year.
That's great. You know, we talk about this all the time in my team, specifically about we are in the raving fan factory business, right? If someone doesn't even get a loan from us for whatever reason, it's super important that they have such a great experience and they learn from us so that they go back to the person that referred them and say, thank you so much for the introduction, right? Whether they used the builder's lender or that they used a credit union or they couldn't get a loan yet. We're helping give advice to get there. It is, and I say this to clients and my partners, right? It's extremely important for me for you to have such a great experience that ultimately, one, we've helped you in your business, but two, it's just easier when your clients choose to work with us, right? We keep you up to speed throughout the process. You probably, as you got here a little bit earlier, you probably heard me making a couple phone calls. We're recording this on a Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, Tuesday updates, right? So I was calling listing agents, buyers agents, and buyers, keeping them fully informed, that proactive communication.
I see your 5 core values on your wall, and one of them was
proactive communication.
Aggressive, proactive communication.
That's right.
And I think that's important. But when we go back to driving that one referral, I think what people do that's wrong, and it goes back to SMART goals here, is they say this, and I watch real estate agents and I watch loan officers do it, and it just hurts my heart. There's anybody in the future that you're ever going to meet that's going to need to get a loan or purchase a home or sell a home, we live off of referrals, and I'd appreciate it very much. No one has ever said, here's my entire Rolodex. You've asked for too much. Hey, Mike, can I borrow $2?
Sure.
Can I have all your money?
No.
You got it? See, so when you say, can I get all the referrals, you're not being specific enough. You're asking for too much. When you just look and say, hey, do you think that you can find, back to SMART goals, are there 2 people that you'd be able to refer to me within the next quarter, 3 months? Do you think you'd be able to do that? Now you have a reason to go back to that person. You did a good deal for them. They're happy to go do it. Boom, boom, boom.
You know, and I train my team as well. And of course, I do this, but I train my team when we're talking to folks. The best time to ask for a referral is when they've complimented you on the service you've already provided on their own, right? So we're talking to them during the process all the time. And so they tell us, oh my gosh, this has been so much easier than I expected it to be. We're so glad to hear that. I'm so grateful you shared that with me. Would you mind doing me a favor? Right? And they're like, well, sure, happy to do you a favor. You know, your agent, as well as me, become unemployed once we get your loan closed, right? So if you know anyone that is thinking about purchasing a home, I'd love for you to introduce us to them sometime in the next few months if you know anyone that's thinking about purchasing a home. Now, I also programmed at the very beginning, Steve.
Oh, you set it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have your goalposts once
When
again.
we're doing the initial consultation that I do, I say, you know, when you buy a home, it's such a big purchase that your brain is going to be thinking about this all the time. It is going to be I can almost guarantee that you're going to run into friends, family, and coworkers that are also thinking about purchasing a home or selling a home. Right? It's like when you buy a car, right? Your reticular activator, you buy a Honda, all you see is Hondas. And so as you come across people that are thinking about selling or buying a home, I'd love for you to introduce them to us. They always say yes, they'd be happy to do that. They don't always do that. So it is important, extremely important that you remind them. We measure something called CCRs, which is current client referrals. So our goal is to get a referral from our client from the time we speak with them and get introduced to them through closing. Now we actually give up to 30 days past past their closing to call it still a current client referral versus a past client referral. But it is absolutely our goal. And when we do that, then we're able to get a referral back to the agent, the referring person that sent us the deal, right? And that adds to their business as well.
There's a reluctance there because people are like, well, I shouldn't be asking you for something. I get it. I want to overcome that reluctance. Here's the action. Here's the mindset that I want you to have. When you say thank you, not today, not in 2024, 2025. When you say thank you, what typically, back when you go back to the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, what was the next line after thank you?
You're welcome.
No. That's my response.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything I can do to repay you?
Sure.
So I want you to think that anytime that someone says thank you, they also said, is there anything I can do to repay you?
Yep.
And that's when you make that ask.
Yep.
When they say thank you, they're actually asking, what else can I do for you?
Man, I appreciate you sharing that. All those stories are awesome. I certainly hope our audience has enjoyed this. If you're a loan officer or a real estate agent and you've enjoyed this, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share this. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to DM me or reach out in any way I can. I'd love to introduce you to folks that you need to know and certainly help you in any way we can. Thank you so much, Steve, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. See you next time.